let's talk about Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. So I want to do non-spoilers first, because the movie just came out. So I will say, I very much liked this movie. I thought this movie was fantastic. When you hear Christopher Nolan is doing The Odyssey, this is exactly what I expected. Now, I know some people are going to have a problem with that when they hear Christopher Nolan is doing The Odyssey, they think, oh, Christopher Nolan is going to ruin The Odyssey. Or, as Hack Guy put it, the opposite. They think The Odyssey is going to ruin Christopher Nolan. Which, I think the escape pod is fine. I have no real issue with the escape pod. But goddamn, that take from Hack Guy, that, oh, the worst part of this movie is when it's doing The Odyssey. Like, you just wanted a different movie, old sport. What the fuck are you talking about? Oh my god. But whatever. I liked the movie. I really do. I think everything Christopher Nolan is doing is really good. Sure, is it not book accurate? Yes. It's got a lot of book inaccuracies. But I don't give a shit. I really do not give a shit. Because you gotta remember, this is originally an oral tradition that was then written down into a story that has then been translated into multiple languages over thousands of years, that for the fifth time is now being turned into a movie, on top of it being like a musical and everything else. Listen, if you have such a problem with this, you were always going to have a problem with this. Nothing the film could have ever done would have made you happy with this movie. Because we can talk all day long about how the movie wasn't accurate to the book. But at the end of the day, I think none of that matters. The historical accuracies don't change the movie itself. And every other work of the Odyssey ever made has historical inaccuracies. There is no perfect version of the Odyssey, because in order to do adaptation, you inherently have to make changes. And anyone who disagrees with that, go watch Stephen King's The Shining. That miniseries is book accurate to a fault, and it fucking sucks because of it. To make a good adaptation, you have to make changes. I can understand having problems with some of those changes, but that in no way makes this a bad movie. Because there's a part of me that thinks Christopher Nolan has become too big. I know he's had multiple big movies. He did 3 Batman movies. His last one made almost $1 billion. This one might make $1 billion. But it kind of feels like Christopher Nolan has just become so popular that hating Christopher Nolan is becoming the default option online. That he's just too big for his own good. And so now the only critique you will hear is negative critique. Not from everybody, obviously. There's still plenty of people who will glaze him. Everything I'm saying will probably be accused of being glaze. But I definitely feel like Christopher Nolan has hit that point in popularity that he's too popular. That the default option is just you gotta dislike this guy. But no, this is a good adaptation. A lot of the critique about people complaining about the inaccuracy of, oh, they made this change. Oh, the armor isn't accurate. The set design isn't accurate. Stuff like that. If there's an old post, there's an old Tumblr post that's like, oh, you should never put numbers in your book because people will always figure out that your numbers are wrong. You should just say like, oh, this happened a really long time ago. Oh, this thing, oh, that's really far away. Right? Like, you should never put specifics in your book because people will have an issue. And your most autistic fan or the person with the most niche PhD will always have an issue. And that's what this feels like, is there are people who have PhDs in Greek armor who this is the only time their PhD has ever been relevant. So of course they have to come out of the woodworks and be like, oh, this movie is inaccurate because of the armor, and so that means it sucks. No, it doesn't. You're just autistic. Trust me, I should know. There's some valid criticism of this movie. I want to be clear, I am not writing off all criticism. Christopher Nolan still doesn't entirely know how to write women. His women are all still pretty basic. That hasn't really changed. I think they're better in this movie than some of his other ones, but that's not really saying much. I think everything about this movie is fantastic. I loved it. I don't know if I'll see it again anytime soon. Like, I know there's like this whole marketing gimmick around like, hey, let's go see this movie 1,000 times. Go see it in IMAX, IMAX 70, Dolby, 4D, you know, seeing it in all the possible versions. God, I could not imagine seeing this movie in 4D. That'd be a fucking mess. I kind of want to do it for that reason alone, but oh my gosh. I think this movie is fantastic. I think the writing is pretty good. I think the acting is pretty well done. I've seen some people bitch and moan that, oh, it's a bunch of A-list Hollywood actors. Like, I feel like if that's your complaint, that they're getting too many popular actors in a movie, that's a you problem at that point. That you're no longer able to separate the actor from the characters they play. That, at a certain point, becomes a you problem. I think it's fine. I think Matt Damon does a fantastic job as Odysseus. Tom Holland does a fantastic job as Telemachus. Anne Hathaway does a good job as Penelope. John Leguizamo does a good job as the pig herder, whose name I don't remember. Robert Pattinson does a fantastic job as the suitor. Elliot Page does a great job as Sinon, a character who is, I don't even remember if they're in the Odyssey. And that's something we'll talk about in a little bit, but they're in the movie for like 5 minutes. They do a fantastic job. I didn't even realize Benny Safdie was Agamemnon until somebody pointed it out later on. Yeah, the guy who played Bowser Jr. earlier this year is fucking Aura Farmer Agamemnon. That's fucking crazy. Lupita Nyong'o as Helen of Troy in... not Clytemnestra. It might be Clytemnestra. I don't remember. The sister. I think they do a fantastic job. Also, only in the movie for like 5 minutes. Calypso. Calypso's okay. It's definitely a more conservative performance, but I think they do a great job as well. It's not exactly what I'd expect, but that's fine. Is it Travis Scott? I think Travis Scott is in this movie. That sounds right. Because you gotta remember, the Odyssey is a poem. In the beginning of this movie, recounts the song of the Trojan War like a poem. And so they get Travis Scott to come in and do it. And again, it's a very brief thing, but yeah, I get it. I get what they were going for. I have no problem with it. The practical effects are amazing. Nolan knows what he's doing when it comes to practical effects, and he knocks it out of the park. You know, there is still CGI used in this movie, but it's used sparingly. Stuff like the Cyclops is a giant, like, animatronic puppet, and it's really impressive. There's a lot of other things that are done completely practical that look fantastic. The score, I think it's Ludwig who does the score. And he, of course, still knocks it out of the park. And you'll see, there's one, the bow theme that I've already seen all over the place on TikTok. And yeah, it is the striking music motif of the movie. Like, holy shit. This movie is great. I would compare it to Dune. Like, genuinely, there are certain choices in this movie that I would say, like, yeah, that reminds me of Dune. But that's a compliment. Because, again, these are both book adaptations that also know what to leave out of the book and know what to, change and know what to add. That's a very important thing in these adaptations. And yeah, I think the Odyssey does a fantastic job. I was really impressed with this movie. I will say, I did not see this in IMAX 70 millimeter. I saw it in just standard, movie theater screen. And here's my thing. If you did not know, there are only 25 70 millimeter IMAX screens in the US. And the closest one to me is like Dallas. And I'm not driving 9 hours to go to Dallas just to see this movie. I don't care how good of a director for Christopher Nolan is. I'm not doing that. And here's the thing. Like, yes, I think Christopher Nolan has complete artistic right to do the movie like this, to make it in 70 millimeter, to, do it all on film, the first ever fully 70 millimeter IMAX movie. I think he's got total right to do that. I applaud him. But at the end of the day, 90% of the population will never see that version. I don't want to say it's like classist, because that's definitely not the right word. But there is a certain level of like, yeah, if I could go see this at like a local theater, I probably would. But the fact that I can't, and I would have to, pay money to either drive or fly to again, my closest one is Dallas. That kind of fucking sucks. That this experience is, I know what some people will say, well, oh, if you care, you would do it. That's classism right there. That's fucking, people for their economic struggles. Because I'm not rich. It's not a bad thing. He has the right to do, and on an artistic level, I'm kind of glad he's doing it. It's like, just because you can do it, sure, if you, as an artist. But I do definitely feel like there is this certain level of, well, oh, if you can't see this movie in 70 millimeters, did you even really see the movie? The way the movie is edited and the aspect ratios and whatnot, it's taking away from the experience. And like, I guess that also goes into like how he edited the movie, because the movie's just under 3 hours. And the reason why, those 70 millimeter IMAX projectors have a limit of 3 hours. I guess if you go and see this in 70 millimeter IMAX, it has no previews or anything. It just goes straight into the movie, because they literally cannot put previews on the reel. But I do also kind of want to see an extended version. Somewhere's out there, Christopher Nolan has a like 4.5 hour cut. And I would love to see that 4.5 hour cut get released one day, beyond the limitations of IMAX. I mean, put it in like digital IMAX doesn't have that limitation, so put it in digital IMAX. I would say they re-release it later this year. Do it maybe in January of next year. But yeah, re-release this. I'd see it again for that. But yeah, there is that certain level. Now, I will say, at the very end of the movie, in the credits, they pay tribute to David Keighley, who, if you do not know, is the father of Jeff Keighley, the Game Awards guy. And David Keighley was very instrumental in the creation of IMAX. And the fact that the movie pays credit to him, I actually really liked. That's a detail I really liked. So yes, there is some stuff here that I do praise, and that's one of them. I know I just made a thing about how, what they changed, what they left out doesn't matter. None of that shit really matters. However, for the purposes of framing my spoiler thoughts, I'm gonna break it down into what the Odyssey left out, what the Odyssey changed, and what the Odyssey added. Not as a point of criticism. This isn't like a CinemaSins video where just because they left something out of the film means I'm criticizing the film. Let me be very clear. I'm just using it as like hey, this is something that was in the book that they left out. I'm just using it as a point of reference. This isn't CinemaSins criticism. I feel like I have to drop that at the beginning. I should be clear, these are only things that I noticed. So I have read this book multiple times, but it has probably been 8 years since I last read it. I think the last version I read was the Emily Wilson translation, which I know that's another thing about these people in the Odyssey. Like, I see people complaining that, oh, Tom Holland calls Odysseus dad. And, you know, why didn't he use the more formal father? Guess what? The Greeks didn't use the word dad or father. There is no winning in this situation. They're fucking Greek. And I have no problem with them using dad or daddy. I think he also uses father. He uses all three at some point or another. I have no problem with any of that. You know, I know the Emily Wilson version is very literal. I know there are some versions that are more poetic. There are much older versions, which I've also read one of them, but I couldn't tell you which one that was. But I've read versions here and there. So these are just off the top of my head. I will not be going over everything they left out, everything they changed, just the ones I want to talk about for the purpose of spoilers. So with all that out of the way, what are some things I noticed? One of the big ones, early on, you see Odysseus, and he's on Calypso's island. I think it's Aegia. And he's eating lotus flower. Because one of the things they left out was the land of the Lotus Eaters, which is, you know, one of the stops early on in the book that, yeah, just isn't here. Instead, they take the Lotus Eater stuff and they give it to Calypso, and she's originally having Odysseus eat it to, like, fix it while his body heals, and then later on he can heal his mind. But it's one of those things that's like, okay, I get what they were going for. I definitely would have kept the land of the Lotus Eaters, but I get it. Another big change, there is no Bag of Winds. So at a certain point in the book, they end up in Aeolus. I think it's Aeolus. And the king of Aeolus gives them a Bag of Winds. And then right before they make their way back to, like, they're right outside of Ithaca. And the crewmates open the Bag of Winds, and it blows them all the way back to the Aeolus. And so then they go to the king and are like, hey, can we get another Bag of Winds? And he's like, no, you're super cursed, buddy. Get out. And so that just doesn't show up at all. I do kind of get why they cut it out. A very big part of this movie is it's the end of hospitality. They constantly make mention throughout the movie about this idea of Zeus's law, which is that, hey, you should always invite strangers into your... Like, if a stranger comes to your door asking for food and shelter, you should give it to them, because you never know when it's going to be a god in disguise. And the movie kind of is about the potential end of Zeus's law. This end of hospitality, the end of the civilized world. And the Bag of Winds directly contradicts that, because they go to the king of Aeolus and he greets them with hospitality and gives them the Bag of Winds. So that kind of goes against some of the main themes of the movie. If, like, oh, he's coming across all these other monsters that do not respect Zeus's law or hospitality, and it's only, and then all of a sudden there's this one person who does, and then it goes back to nobody respecting it. It'd be out of place. I understand why he didn't do it. Speaking of the Cyclops, so in the book, when they get trapped inside the Cyclops' cave, he eats a few of the people, and then they get the Cyclops drunk. And after the Cyclops is drunk, they talk to him because he can speak. And it's during this conversation that Odysseus introduces himself as nobody. It's one of the more famous lines in the book. And then it's only after he's blinded the Cyclops and, you know, they escape, does he reveal his true name as Odysseus, which then, you know, the Cyclops goes and cries to his dad Poseidon, who then curses Odysseus' quest. And in this one, that doesn't happen. Instead, while they do say the Cyclops can speak, and we do hear him crying out for his dad Poseidon after he gets stabbed, he doesn't make conversation with him. Instead, they just go into the Cyclops' cave, and he just eats 2 of them. He eats 2 of the guys, and it's the whole Cyclops scene is so well done. Him eating the guys is clearly a homage to the painting, the Titan Kronos eating his children, which if you go look up that painting, they literally create that in a shot in this movie. And it's gruesome, and oh my god, there are so many gruesome things in this movie. We'll talk about some of them. But that was, they clearly had a purpose. You know, they're still keeping up. The monster doesn't care about Zeus's law or anything like that. There are no other Cyclopses. So even though they have a chance to kill the Cyclops on the first night, they decide not to do it, because how are they going to open the door? There are no other Cyclopses. Or Cyclopes, I guess. But no, the whole scene with the Cyclops is really good. It's just one of those weird things where it's like, this is one of the more iconic lines in the Odyssey, is the "nobody stabbed me." And because it's a great example of showing off Odysseus's wisdom, but also his hubris. And yeah, it's just kind of a weird choice not to do it in the movie. I get why they did it. It's kind of like when we talked about Project Hail Mary, and I was like, oh, that whole line about big spooky spider is one of the more iconic lines in the book. And I was kind of surprised it wasn't in the movie. It's just, you know, you would think like all the iconic lines would make it in. But no, not always. Another thing is, during the whole Trojan War thing, there is no Achilles. I know there was a rumor that Elliot Page was going to play Achilles. He does not play Achilles. He plays a different character named Sinon, who we'll talk about in a little bit. But yeah, there is no Achilles in this movie. There's no mention of Achilles or anything like that. When they go to the underworld, because they do go to the underworld, I know it's not exactly like the fire and brimstone underworld. It's more of this like black sand beach, but it's basically the underworld. And yeah, there's no mention of Achilles whatsoever, which kind of surprised me. That's just the basic stuff that I know they left out. Again, there's plenty of others. Go get someone who has a PhD in the Odyssey to tell you about those. Things they changed. So the biggest change in this movie is that there are no gods in this movie. Like, yes, Athena shows up. Athena is played by Zendaya, but it's not clear if it's really Athena or just a figment in Odysseus's head. Because, like, in the book, for example, early on, a beggar shows up and gives Telemachus the idea to go to Sparta to find out what happened to his dad. That happens in the movie, and the beggar does show up in the movie, but there is no hint that it's Athena. It's just a beggar. I mean, it could still be Athena, but it's not. Like, they don't... In the book, we know for sure it's Athena, and not in the movie. But yeah, there are no gods. Most of the time, the gods are just through, like, hey, the raging water is Poseidon. The thunderstorm, that's Zeus. There are no gods. Hermes. Hermes plays a big part in the book. No, he's not in the movie at all. I don't even think they mention Hermes. At one point, I know they do mention the sun god, which I did not hear them say Apollo. In the book, it's Helios, the sun god. But I guess someone else heard Apollo, which I did not hear. Maybe they did use Apollo. I just heard them say the sun god. So I don't know, but you don't see any of the gods. With two sort of exceptions. Circe and Calypso. So we'll talk about both of them. Circe, the whole Circe scene is fantastic. It's fucking horrifying. So what happens is they come to Circe's island. Odysseus goes off to hunt some food. while the rest of the crew goes up to visit Cersei's place. She's just a lone woman living in a shack. And they come in and Cersei's afraid of them, but they're like, no, we don't want to hurt you. We're just looking for food and supplies. And so Cersei offers them some food. They start eating, and then they can't stop eating. And they're like screaming while they're eating. And then she goes up to them and she starts like pulling on their skin and molding them like clay, turning them into pigs. And it's fucking horrifying. And the sound design. Oh my god, the sound design. Every time she moves them, it sounds like cracking a bone. And it just sends chills down your spine. Like, holy shit. The Cersei scene is horrifying. And it's so well done. It is so well done. But yeah, there is no indication that Cersei is a god, which I want to say she's a daughter of Helios, if I remember correctly. I don't know, it's been a while. But there is no indication of that. Instead, eventually Odysseus comes in, knowing that his men have already been turned into pigs, and basically threatens Cersei and it's like, hey, you turn my men back and we'll just leave. The men want to kill Cersei, but he tells them no. And then as they leave, she tells them like, hey, the gods only want you to get home. The rest of your crew will die. Which he says that he'll fight in the face of the gods. And she's like, I don't know. I doubt it. So that's that. From there, we also get Calypso. Because another thing is, in the book, they spend about a year with Cersei. Calypso, on the other hand, they do... So by this point, the whole crew is dead. Because Odysseus has been eating the lotus flower, he doesn't know that his crew is dead. He doesn't know that he has a son or a wife. He's just stuck on Calypso's island while he heals. It's still been about 7 years on this island. And yeah, Calypso's keeping him there. Charlize Theron, who I think she does a decent job. It's a lot more stoic than you would expect. Like, there's a certain part of Calypso that is, she's the daughter of Atlas. She's been banished to this island for many years. She's lonely. She's desperate. And she plays it a lot more stoically. Like, there's a part of her that's like, okay, I've erased Odysseus's memories. My hope is that he would fall in love with me and not want to go back to his wife and kid. But once he remembers he has a wife and kid, he wants to leave. And she kind of recognizes it before he does. And eventually she tells him to stop eating the lotus flower, so that way he will be able to leave. And eventually he does leave. He makes a little makeshift raft. And now, the language update, I don't mind most of it. The one that did throw me off, though, is when Calypso's like, oh, you have to leave, you have to let go of control if you want to leave the island. It's a leap of faith. I don't know how old the term leap of faith is, but that's the one moment, like, the whole dad stuff didn't take me out at all. Most of the language didn't take me out, didn't bother me. That's the one where I was like, wait, leap of faith. Like, if she had just told him you have to have faith, I would have been like, yeah, that's fine. Okay, that makes sense. But saying it's a leap of faith, he has to let go of control. They have a lot of the Trojan War in this movie. So, as far as I remember, the actual story of the Trojan horse is not in the Iliad. Like, the Iliad ends with Achilles killing Hector, and then Hector's dad asking for his body back, so that way they can give him a proper burial. In my memory, it's the Odyssey is where you get the story of the Trojan horse and the sacking of Troy. It might not even be in the Odyssey. It might be in the Aeneid, though. It's been so long, I kind of don't remember. But no, they do a lot of the Odyssey. They do a lot of the Trojan War. And I've seen some people complain that, like, oh, Nolan just wanted to make a war movie, but instead of setting it in modern day, he set it in ancient Greece. I don't think that's much of an issue. I really don't think that's that much of an issue. I think Nolan does a fine job. His war movie is fine. We get like a long extended sequence where we see the soldiers trapped in the Trojan horse for days. And they have to defecate in the horse. They can't make a sound. And it's good. Everything with the Trojan horse is good. The actual ransacking of Troy is done really well. All of the imagery is fantastic. The whole thing they do with the Athena, with both Zendaya, but also cutting off the statue's head. The iconography of the Trojan horse as the sort of representation of, not in like the Odyssey and I guess the Aeneid, the Trojan horse represents, Odysseus's greatest success. But in the movie, it treats it like a failure because it's a violation of Zeus's law, taking one of the things the Greeks hold the most sacred and turning it against their enemies. And, they win the war, sure, but it comes at the cost of violating their beliefs. And that's why a big part of the movie is about the end of hospitality. Because I don't remember how much they mention Zeus's law in the actual Odyssey itself, but it's so important in this movie. Every other sentence is about Zeus's law, the importance of Zeus's law. Robert Pattinson's character hates the Zeus's law stuff. Oh, another beggar here in this house that, again, isn't even mine. Like, Zeus's law is so important. Everywhere Odysseus and his crew go, they expect to, hear Zeus's law. And no, instead, they get turned against them. When they fight the Lystragonians, they don't adhere to Zeus's law. The Cyclops constantly go against Zeus's law. And that's, again, one of the main themes of this movie. Is that so there's this whole bit with the sea people, which, again, I do not think was in the Odyssey, the book. This is something added for the movie, and I'll bring it up now. But yeah, this is something that, they don't mention the sea people at all. But eventually you learn Odysseus and his crew are the sea people because they don't respect Zeus's law. And it's now become, this story, this myth. And I think it does a really good job at going with the theme of the movie. So if you've ever seen a Christopher Nolan movie, he's big on symbols. Nolan has a symbol motif. He really likes his physical symbols in his movie. The most famous ones are in Inception, the top in Inception, the wedding ring, stuff like that. This movie has two important symbols. Early on in the movie, Penelope gives Odysseus a brooch of Athena and is like, hey, if anyone tells me you had this brooch, I'll know they actually met you. So that's one important symbol. And then the other one is in order to conscript people into the Trojan War, they draw lots. They do a lottery. And Sinon has one of the Sinon gets forced one of the lots because Robert Pattinson's character, even though he constantly talks about, oh, if I had gone to war, it would have been great, but I wasn't allowed. But it's more that Robert Pattinson's character was promised to give Sinon's father money for his son going to war. And Robert Pattinson didn't do that. And so instead, Odysseus has held onto the lot for the past 10 years and is using it against, and, eventually uses it against Robert Pattinson and places it in his mouth when he dies. People from the sea. This idea that, as the Greek age, the Mycenaean age comes to an end, we now have these groups of people who are coming in from the sea and just kill and pillage and don't follow Zeus's law. As far as I'm aware, that's not in the original book. I'm pretty sure that's just added for this movie to get down this theme of the end of civilization. And that since, they broke Zeus's law at Troy, now everybody's worried about them coming to their village next. And so that's why no matter where Odysseus goes, he doesn't see any, right? He constantly hears about the sea people but never sees them. Nobody obeys Zeus's law. The whole Zeus's law thing, getting up to this theme, because that's the whole thing. Odysseus is being punished in this movie. The reason why it takes him 10 years to get home is because he violated Zeus's law. And so this is the gods punishing him. Another person we see punished is Agamemnon. So I know Agamemnon shows up in the underworld in the Odyssey, but I don't know if they actually talk about like how he died, because there's a whole other Greek story where in the lead up to the Trojan War, Agamemnon sacrifices his daughter because he needs to give a sacrifice to Zeus for good winds. And the only sacrifice Zeus will accept is Agamemnon's daughter. So he gives up his daughter and kills her. And of course, his wife, I think it's Clytemnestra, is pissed off and, vows revenge. So when Agamemnon easily finds his way back after the war, it's because Clytemnestra has planned his death. And we get a really great moment where we get to see her kill him. They don't bring up any, because that's another story, by the way. Because Clytemnestra kills Agamemnon, and then their son kills Clytemnestra, and then the Furies start hunting him down. So he runs to Athens, where they then establish the Athenian legal system, where it's determined that that a man can kill his mother because, this is, thousands of years ago and women are still property. And because she killed her husband, only the husband had rights. It's kind of fucked up by modern sensibilities. But that's a whole other story. All we get is the part where it's, hey, Agamemnon was killed by his wife, and then at some point his son avenged him. I want to say Menelaus brings that up. Speaking of Menelaus, Telemachus does go to see the King of Sparta and Helen of Troy, and we see Helen has been scarred, and it's implied, they don't specifically say it's done by her husband, but it's implied that Menelaus is the one who scarred her, because, she was abducted for the war for being the most beautiful woman. So now he scarred her to make sure nobody will ever take her again. Again, Nolan doesn't still entirely know how to write women, but it's an interesting take that, as far as I know, is completely added for this movie. But I did really like it. Again, Lupita Nyong'o is not in this movie that much, but every time she is, playing both Clytemnestra and Helen of Troy, she does a fantastic job. And then the final thing I have to spoil, at least my thoughts on the spoilers, is at the end of the movie, so Odysseus kills all of the suitors. In the book, it's Odysseus and Telemachus who killed the suitors. And Athena then comes in with a Deus Ex Machina and tells, hey, people of Troy, don't be too mad at Odysseus and Telemachus just because they killed all the rich people. Like, the gods kind of come in and tell the people of Ithaca, like, hey, it's okay. He had the gods' approval to do this. In the movie, yes, the killing still happens. I think the final scene of Odysseus killing all the suitors is really well done. I do wish they had given Telemachus a little bit more to do. Like, he fights one guy and then gives his dad a sword. But I still think it's mostly well done. But at the end of it, because the reason why they don't want Telemachus to kill anybody is because then he would be exiled. Like, early on in the movie, he says he wants to kill all the suitors, and Penelope tells him, no, you can't, because that would violate Zeus's law. And, all that. They do try, they do try a little bit to reframe Penelope as a more feminist figure. She does also dress down Telemachus and call him a boy. Like, know your place, boy. You are not king. But overall, again, I think Anne Hathaway's performance is fantastic. I think she does a great job in this movie. Even if, again, Nolan still doesn't really know how to write women. But I think it's fine. I think it's fine overall. Odysseus kills all the suitors, or at least most of them. Anyone who's not loyal to him. He kills Robert Pattinson's character. Because there's this when they go to the underworld earlier in the movie, he talks to Sinon, and Sinon is like, why do you not honor your dead? Why did you trick me and not tell me you guys were inside the horse? Why do you not honor me on my death? And Odysseus is like, I will honor you. And Sinon tells him, after you are returned to Ithaca, head west, and there you will find a place to honor me and everyone else who has died. So at the end of the movie, Odysseus gets exiled, which does not happen in the book, and him and Penelope head west, while Telemachus becomes king of Ithaca. I don't really know how to feel, like, again, most of the changes, most of the additions, I'm fine with. This is the one I don't know how to feel about. Because the whole point of the story is Odysseus's, 10-year journey back to Ithaca. And I understand, a big part of it is seeing his wife and kid again. And now that he has seen his wife, he has seen his kid, it kind of sucks that he then immediately gets exiled. But again, I get what they were going for. They set up very early on in the movie that Penelope, instead of going to the Trojan War, she just wants to run away with Odysseus. That at the end of the day, she's the one he cares about. Any other things? The Argos, the dog, that's something from the book that I didn't know if it was going to be in the movie. It's in the movie. They did not change it. There are multiple dog deaths in this movie. So if you care about the dog dying, the dogs fucking die. Overall, I think the movie's fantastic. I think it did a fantastic job at everything it set out to do. I thoroughly enjoyed it from beginning to end. I don't know if I'll see it again anytime soon, but what I did see, I loved. I truly did love. Christopher Nolan knows what he's doing. There's going to be a lot of hate. Again, Christopher Nolan's too big for his own good. He's going to get hate just for existing. Don't listen to the haters. This movie's fantastic. You should go see it. Everyone should go see it. For everything I talked about, there's at least one thing I didn't talk about. There is so much well done in this movie. I thoroughly enjoyed it. 9 out of 10. Loved it.